Hey everyone, this is Miss Ava Hart, and today is Friday, October the 23rd, and it is 5:20 p.m. All right, this is one of the instructional videos for the week of Monday, October 26, 2020. So this is one of the instructional videos for the week of Monday, October 26, 2020. So we're starting a new text, and the text is Letter from Birmingham Jail. It is in your textbook, My Perspectives, your textbook, and it is on page 271. So you are going to receive a total of 11 questions. Now, in order to receive the answers to these questions, you must listen carefully to this video because I will answer the questions, but you must listen carefully to the video in order to receive the answers to the questions. Now, this text is 49 paragraphs long. We are not going to read all 49 paragraphs. We are going to read the first 10 paragraphs, and then that's it, because I just wanted you to be exposed to the text, to get a foundational, to get a glimpse of what Dr. King was writing in this letter. Excuse me. So I'm not going to do all excuse me. I'm not going to do all 49 paragraphs. We're just going to read the first 10 paragraphs, and then we're going to move on to a different text. I just want you to be able to just get a glimpse or a foundation of what Dr. King wrote when he was in jail in Birmingham. And it was something else that I wanted to say. Oh no, it's something else I'm going to write down because I need to add something to this. All right. All right, so I'm going to read the first 5 paragraphs. And then that's assignment number 1. I'm going to give you background information, and then I'm going to read and summarize the first 5 paragraphs to help you with the questions, with the 11 questions. And then the second assignment, you're going to read paragraphs 6 through 10 on your own and answer the questions. So what I'm doing is just modeling to you a way in which you can approach your reading. So when you have to read, because this text is challenging, it's complicated. I remember reading this in college. So the words, the diction that Dr. King uses is challenging. So I'm going to model to you how you can approach a text of this complexity, and then you're going to do the next 5 paragraphs on your own. Like I said, this text originally is 49 paragraphs, but we're not going to read all 49. We're just going to read the first 10 because I just want to expose you to the text and just to let you know pieces of Dr. King's life, some of the things that he went through, and to expose you to some of his writings, because we are going to read his I Have a Dream speech in full. We're going to read the entire speech, but for this letter we're only going to read the first 10 paragraphs. So the directions, when you get this document in your assignments on Teams, there will be a total of 11 questions, and the directions are as follows. Listen carefully as the teacher provides background information and summarizes the first 5 paragraphs of Letter from Birmingham Jail, as she will provide the answers to the questions below. This assignment is worth 23 points. So, first of all, let me give you some background information about this letter. And I'm reading, it's in your textbook, My Perspectives, on page 271. And I'm reading directly from the book. Background. By the late 1950s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had emerged as a key figure of the civil rights movement. During the Kennedy administration, Dr. King was arrested in April 1963 for protesting racial segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. As he sat in jail, he read a newspaper article in which 8 white clergymen criticized him for unwise and untimely demonstrations. Without proper writing paper, Dr. King drafted a response, this letter, in the cramped margins of that newspaper. So, I'm going to summarize, and I'm going to summarize it in Miss Ava Hart's voice. But I'm modeling to you how you can approach literature. How you can approach reading comprehension, that the best way to approach a text, whether it's a poem, whether it's a play, whether it's a letter, whether it's an informational text like we read when we read 1963, the year that changed everything, the best way to approach anything that you read is to make it your own. Summarize it in the way in which you talk every day. That way, you're able to engage with the text better if you just summarize it like you talk every day. You know, make it real, make it down to earth, make it where it's entertaining or it's fun to you. So, like I said, I'm going to model to you how to summarize this text so that you can show comprehension, but at the same time make it real and down to earth and in a way in which you can understand. So the background. So this is what's going on. This is the reason why Dr. King wrote this letter. He was in Birmingham, Alabama, and he decided to engage in a protest because he was like, you know what? You can't just keep discriminating against black people because we black. You can't keep saying, oh, we got to have different water fountains and we got to have different restrooms and we got to go through the back door to a restaurant or to a retail store while the white people can go through the front door. Like, no, enough is enough. So even though there were laws in place at that time in Birmingham, Alabama, against protesting, Dr. King was like, forget them laws. What you're doing is not right. You are discriminating based on a person's skin color, and we not having it. So I don't care about your laws. I'm going to protest. So he decided to protest. And because he protested, he broke a law, and so he was sent to jail. So as he's sitting in jail, he's given the newspaper for the day, I guess. Now, don't ask me how he was given a newspaper or how he had access to a newspaper. I don't know. But he was given a newspaper for the day. And in that newspaper, it was 8 white clergymen. Clergymen are just like your pastors, your preachers, your ministers. So it was 8 white clergymen who criticized him. And they were like, you know, this is not the time for you to be protesting. Like, you know, you just stepped way out of your league. Like, you overstepped your boundaries. You coming up in here in Birmingham, Alabama, and you over here protesting, and it's just not the time for that. So basically, they were criticizing Dr. King for his actions. So while Dr. King was in the jail cell in Birmingham, he didn't have any paper. So he actually wrote this letter that's in your textbook in the margins of the newspaper. So let me see. This is as close to a newspaper I have right now. But imagine like this was the newspaper. So he actually wrote all 49 paragraphs of letter from Birmingham Jail in the margins. This will be considered the margins. So he actually wrote this letter in the margins of the newspaper. So he may have, if this was an actual newspaper, he probably wrote it all around the article in the margins. Because he was like, okay, we about to address this right here and right now. Okay, so that is the background. So let me look at my questions. Okay, I haven't answered, well, I've answered them, but I haven't answered them. So I'm going to be more direct and more focused so you'll be able to answer these questions. So the year is 1963. It is April 16th, 1963. It is April 16th, 1963. It is April 16th, 1963. That Dr. King was sitting in the Birmingham jail. He was reading this newspaper article, and he decided to respond to these 8 white clergymen, and he decided to write letter from Birmingham Jail in the margins. He did this on April 16th, 1963. Okay? He wrote this letter from a Birmingham jail on April 16th, 1963. He was in jail. The reason why Dr. King was in jail is because he engaged in a protest. And protests were illegal at the time in Birmingham, Alabama. It was illegal to protest. And he was protesting racial segregation. So he was in jail because he broke a law. The law in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963 said it was unlawful for anyone to engage in a protest. Dr. King engaged in a protest against racial segregation. Therefore, he broke the law. Now he is in jail. All right, so I've just answered the first 2 questions. All right, letter from Birmingham Jail is the genre. Genre means type or kind. So in literature, we have different genres of literature or different types of literature. So letter from Birmingham Jail is the genre of nonfiction. Letter from Birmingham Jail is the genre of nonfiction. This is true. The events that Dr. King describes in this letter are true factual events. This is nonfiction. It is an informational text. Letter from Birmingham Jail is an informational text. It's educating the reader on the topic. It's a topic that Dr. King is educating us about. And that topic is why he felt it necessary to protest in Birmingham, Alabama. That's the topic of this letter. The topic of this letter is why it was necessary for him to engage in a protest against racial segregation. He's educating the white clergymen on why it was necessary for him to engage in a protest against racial segregation. That's why letter from Birmingham Jail is an informational text, because he's educating the 8 white clergymen that has something to say. He's educating them on why it was necessary for him to engage in a protest against racial segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. So letter from Birmingham Jail, the genre of literature that letter from Birmingham Jail is nonfiction informational text. This is a nonfiction informational text. Letter from Birmingham Jail is a nonfiction informational text. Okay. And I already said, why did Dr. King write his letter from Birmingham Jail? He wrote his letter to educate the 8 white clergymen on why he felt it was necessary to protest racial segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. That's why he wrote this letter. He wanted to educate the 8 white clergymen who had so much to say why it was necessary for him to engage in a protest against racial segregation. All right, so I have just answered questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. At any time during this video, you can pause and you can go back and you can replay until you get the answer to the questions. All right, so I just answered questions 1 through 4. Oh no, I actually answered 1 through 5, because the next question is, how did Dr. King write his letter? I already told you that. He wrote his letter on April 16th, 1963, in the margins of the newspaper. He was reading a newspaper where 8 white clergymen were criticizing him for coming to Birmingham, Alabama, and making all this noise and protesting. So he responded to that by writing the letter in the margins of the newspaper. So that's how he wrote this letter. He wrote it in the margins of the newspaper that he was reading in the jail cell. All right, so I've just answered 1 through 5. So you need to know this. It's what we call in literature, or English language and literature, or in literature, we call them literary devices. Literary devices is what how I describe literary devices are. They are like seasoning to a text. Just like when you cook, you add seasoning to add flavor to your dish. Well, a literary device adds flavor to a text, whether that text is a short story, a play, a poem, an informational text. Without literary devices, then that piece of literature is bland, it's boring, it doesn't have any flavor. Every writer, every phenomenal writer knows how to use literary devices. They know how to use literary devices to add flavor to their writing. So Dr. King, in his letter from Birmingham Jail, he added flavor. He added seasoning to his letter by using the literary device diction. D as in dog, I-C-T-I-O-N, diction. So Dr. King, in order to add flavor to this letter, he used the literary device diction. Diction is the words the author chooses to convey his message. Reveals his attitude toward his subject. I'll read it again. Diction, the words the author chooses to convey his message. Reveals his attitude toward his subject. Once again, diction. The words the author chooses to convey his message. Reveals his attitude toward his subject. Once again, diction. The words the author chooses to convey his message reveals his attitude toward his subject. That is diction. You also can find the definition of diction in the back of your book. And I'm going to tell you where you can find it, just in case you just weren't able to write that definition down. You can find the definition of diction in the back of your book on page R as in Robert 45. You can also find the definition of diction in the back of your textbook on page R as in Robert 45. So Dr. King, he wanted to add flavor to his letter from Birmingham Jail. So he decided he wanted to use to use the literary device diction. So, diction, the type of word choice that Dr. King used to write his letter from Birmingham Jail, the word choice he used were words of respect and civility. Respect and civility. Civility is spelled C-I-V as in vase, I-L-I-T-Y. So Dr. King's diction or his word choice was respect and civility. Civility is C-I-V as in vase, I-L-I-T-Y. Another word for civility or synonym for civility is politeness. So Dr. King, when he wrote his letter from Birmingham Jail, he used words that were respectful and that were polite. Because remember, this is 1963. Dr. King just couldn't be popping off at the mouth. He couldn't just be popping off at the mouth because he was dealing with white racist men and women. So he had to choose his words carefully. And remember, he needed to convince the white people that had so much to say about him, the white clergymen. He had to convince them that his actions were right, that he was justified in his actions. So he had to use words real careful so as to get his point across, but as to not to offend. So his word choice, his diction was words that were respectful and words that were civil or polite. So his word choice or his diction were words that showed respect and words that were civil or that were polite. Just like if you were asking your parent for a new pair of kicks. You're not going to go to your parents and say, bro, you need to get me these new kicks. That's not what you're going to say. You're going to use the proper word choice to your parents in order to get these new gym shoes. You may say, mommy, please, can I have these shoes? Or you might say, I've been really good. I washed the dishes. I did all my chores. I did everything you told me to do. Please, mom. Please, dad. Please, grandma. Please buy me these shoes. I've been real good. You're going to use a different choice of words. You're not going to tell your parents or your grandparents or whoever's taking care of you, bro, you need to get me these shoes and you need to get me these shoes now. That's not what you're going to do. You're going to use proper diction, proper word choice in order to convey your message. Your message is, I want some new kicks. But you're going to use proper word choice in order to get those new shoes, those new gym shoes. So Dr. King is the same instance or the same conversation or the same point, that he had to use the proper word choice because he knew his audience. His audience were 8 white clergymen who more than likely were racist, and he needed them to understand why he did what he did. But he just couldn't be popping off at the mouth. So he had to use respect. He had to use diction. He had to use words that were respectful and that were civil or polite. All right, so I just answered the first 6 questions. I answered the first 7 questions. And I'm going to stop this video. I don't want to make it too long. So I just did the background. I haven't even started reading the text. I just did the background. So I've answered questions 1 through 7. Stop the video, pause it, go back and play it again in order to get all the answers to the first 7 questions. So this has been Miss Aberhart, and I'm going to come back with part 2 of this assignment. So I'll see you in a second.